So, friends, welcome to the second part of Solidarity with Immigrants. And I'm glad to welcome Matt Guynn of On Earth Peace and Founa Badet, who is the Church of the Brethren Director of Intercultural Ministries, as two of the anchors. But I also know CJ, we've got you today. And so I'm going to turn to Matt and Founa and just get us started and let you introduce all the others that are going to be helping us tonight, especially CJ, because I know, CJ, you're going to be part of helping us go through this process. And so we welcome you all, and I don't want to take any more time away from your presentation, so I'll just turn it right over to you to get started. Welcome.
Okay, wonderful. And maybe Founa and I can just say hi then as the staff members of the DDR team, and welcome also Julie and Vildor. The four of us comprise the staff of the Deportation Defense Response Team. And that's the context of this two-part series. And so, Founa, would you like to bring greetings also, just as we start?
Of course, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight again, and God bless you. I will say that tonight you are in for a treat, for this will carry you to maybe able to train others on what we are going to learn together and practice. I am blessed to serve in this capacity and to share with you all the work that we are doing. It's heavy, instrumental, but God is in it, and well, all of us to be here tonight, I thank God. So I'm happy to be here with you guys from Intercultural Ministries office, discipleship office. So Matt, we're not wasting any more time. Blessings.
Okay, well, CJ, I think that we'll just CJ and I are going to introduce ourselves in a moment, but really we want to put you right into trios to talk with each other a little bit about what's happening in your own communities right now. And so I'm going to put really the question is very simple. It's what is happening in your community or state related to immigration. So what is happening in your community or state related to immigration right now? And you're going to have about 6 minutes, which means in groups of 3. So that means you're going to have about 2 minutes each to share. And you may be able to do this. You may not. Some of you are on computers, and it'll feel easy to do this, and some it won't. So don't get stressed about it. But I'm going to put a link in here that if you are able to come onto this slide and type onto the slide, just a second, I'll put it in here for you. Something about your context that, or something that someone in your group says, then we can just get a snapshot of what's happening. So I'll share my screen just so you can see what I'm even talking about. There's some little like post-it notes there. So if you're able to follow that link, you can see, and you can just click on one of those and you can put a little something from what someone says in your group. There you go. So, and don't get too stressed about it. We just want to see what happens in a few of those groups. So Anton, take it away. So 6 minutes in the groups. What is happening in your community or state related to immigration right now?
Great. And Matt's put that question in the chat so you can refer back to it. Any questions before I put you into breakout groups? Okay, here we go. Groups of 3, 6 minutes.
I'm going to give us a minute to come back and just reminder, if you are out and doing something else, also check your mic. So that way we can be actively listening to one another. So I do see a couple of notes. I see folks out from Ohio have put out on the slide just several folks being detained. I see a couple of folks also put in like There's over 800 people who are detained at the Marion County Jail out in Indianapolis. I see Chicago giving an update too about like what folks are seeing in neighborhoods. I think really seeing some of the very visual, I think, violence that folks out in Chicago are experiencing, the tear gas, the different ways in which I think that agency is making themselves present in our community. I also see a couple of notes around like schools being closed because of ICE activity in the neighborhood and the impact that that has on young people and children. I see folks adding, some of this like collaborations with local county jails, really starting to gain some traction and gaining some unfortunate momentum is what I will call it, that just enables this agency to grow its capacity. So, keep adding as folks are reflecting. Maybe you really took a little bit of time and just kind of chatted together, didn't get the chance to add a note. I think that's okay. The goal of this being sort of our arrival conversation is that a lot of us are actually facing similar, if not interconnected threats, and threats, like actual threats to like our community. So we really wanted to spend some time kind of making sense of it and making sense of what is happening around us. And we'll redrop the link in the chat for sure. But we want to just honor we're all arriving, navigating different political conditions. Some things are more visible than others. Some of the conversations, I think, sometimes can feel more personal, interpersonal, depending on how close some of this like immediate threats and violence is being experienced. So I just want to invite us to just kind of do a little like deep breath together, depending on where you're at. Just kind of take some air in and then release some of the air. If you need a second deep breath, also do that. Spend maybe a couple of seconds just kind of touching in with your body, kind of like we have conversations that are about the impact. We can feel like we're holding our breath, or we can feel some of the tension in our shoulders and in our back. If you're sitting somewhere, like putting your feet on the ground if possible, so that you feel like something else is holding you, or really putting your bottom on the chair and letting the chair hold you. It's a good way to just remind yourself, like we're holding each other in this space, both physically and emotionally. And as we think about what kind of conversation we want to have, wanting to just really spend some time and focusing on how do we hold the space. So I see folks are still adding. I also see some good news. Not everything that we're seeing is dire. I also think that part of our conversation today, it's about, yes, there are very some challenging and difficult moments we're navigating, that our neighbors, our loved ones are navigating. And incredible challenges also present incredible opportunities, like how community is responding, how neighbors are coming together and creating activation spaces, how there are collaborations against immigration that are breaking down right now. And so we'll get to explore a little bit more, but this is also what we wanted to make sure that this was a good arriving space. So I'm gonna pass it back to you, Matt, to just do like a more of a formal introduction, and then we can kick it off with what are we actually creating together in this space.
So, welcome everybody. My name is Matt Guynn. I am co-director of On Earth Peace, and I'm a part of the DDR, Deportation Defense Response Team, together with Founa Badet and Julie and Vildor, who are both members of the organizing team, who are here tonight and have been working hard day in and day out. And just like I'm so impressed by the work that Vildor and Julie have been doing, connecting with congregations across the country. and just today, some of the connections that have been made. And I'm glad I see folks who are here because of the work of Julie and Vildor, just in the last 24 hours. So I see you, Orland, and I'm glad that you're here. And and so I'm really glad to be here. I'm really glad to be working with CJ, and we're trying to walk together with the Church of the Brethren as the Deportation Defense Response Team to figure out how to meet the immediate needs of our sisters, our brothers, our siblings who are under threat right now, and also how to activate the whole denomination based on our faith that is about being in solidarity with people who are different, with people who are the other, and with people who are under threat. And so we're here as part of that work tonight. And there is, it's, it is terrible and tragic time. And during terrible and tragic times, sometimes the best is summoned out of us. And some of that can happen tonight, that we can find our deepest calling in the darkest time. And so I believe that we can find inspiration even in the worst times. And that some of us might find that inspiration tonight during this webinar, that something might happen that might change the path that you're on, that might change the path that we're on. And so I'm gonna pass it to CJ.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you all of you really for joining. I want to give both a special shout out to folks who are in very political contested spaces. I saw and heard folks from Oklahoma joining, and folks from Wichita who's really close, or really close neighbors. My name is CJ Garcia. My pronouns is she, they, AJ. And I am joining you both as a community-based organizer in the state of Oklahoma, but also as an immigrant rights organizer that now gets the privilege to be sort of in the split space. I do a lot of community-based organizing through Dream Action Oklahoma, which is a very grassroots membership and directly impacted community organizing org out of Oklahoma, Tulsa, Guyman, different areas of the state. And that on my quote unquote 9 to 5 job, I'm doing organizing in the state of Washington with workers. I organize folks in different industries. I have the privilege of being the director of co-director of organizing around working class restaurant workers, domestic workers, farm workers, so many of them whom are immigrants, so many of them who are being targeted by the current attacks launched against them in this moment. And so it's a very both, I think, interesting time, for lack of a better word, to be a person who's directly impacted, who leads this work, who has to think about how to prepare others to be able to show up for each and every one of us. And it's also very grounding to have organized in a state like Oklahoma, where resources have always been limited, where allyship is not just a aspirational need, but it's a requirement in order for us to be able to get through this moment. And so I feel very grateful and inspired to see so many faces all across. I'm tuning in today from Portland because we just did a convening here where we connected with a lot of organizers and community members as well. So just feeling incredibly grateful. I did a lot of deportation defense work over the last decade, and I think we're in a very critical moment where it's not just about immigration, but it's actually about defending our humanity and our connection to one another and our ability to see each other as people, not just an immigration status, not just as a racial or cultural identity, but truly to be able to see each other as a human being. That's what's at stake right now. And so every time I'm in a space where I get to have that conversation with people, I feel very privileged and very honored. So thank you so much for welcoming me into your virtual space. And thank you so much for inviting me into this conversation. Pass it back to you.
Founa, please pray us into the meeting.
Yes. Let us pray. Holy and gracious God, in these days of division and unrest, we turn to you. Lord, you are our refuge, our strength, our peace, and our Redeemer. When violence wounds our cities and fear fills our hearts, you remain steady. When anger rises and words become weapons, you still whisper, peace, be still. Lord, we lift before you the victims of political violence, immigration issues, the nightmares, those injured, those grieving, those whose lives will never be the same. Father God, we ask that you wrap them in your mercy. Give them comfort where there is sorrow and hope where there is whisper. We pray for leaders and public servants that truth may guide them, justice ground them, and compassion shape their decision. Restrain every impulse toward hatred and revenge, break cycles of fear and retaliation. Lord Jesus, tonight as we are here to learn together, as you are teaching us to be peacemakers, to stand firm in love, to speak truth without cruelty, to protect the vulnerable, and to seek the good of our neighbor, make us, our churches, our homes, our neighborhoods, a place of safety and healing. Let your spirit breathe through us, healing for our nation, our hearts, our words, and our ways. Thank you for equipping Matt and CJ tonight to guide us through this session, to equip us to be better, to stand firm, to truth and love when violence surrounds us. And Lord, we lift Jamaica right now in your hands, as well as Cuba and every other places that Melissa, the hurricane, want to touch. We know you're already sending resources for them. Bless us tonight. Thank you for our moderator, Enten, and Ventures for welcoming us to learn together. In the strong name of Jesus, who calms the storm and call us to follow him, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Founa.
Thank you, thank you. And then, Matt, if I can ask you to go back to screen share, I'm gonna kick us off, and then talk to you all about like why are we coming together today? What is it that you can expect from our space over the next amount of time, whatever that amount of time might look like to you, or the next couple of hours? Maybe it's less, maybe it's more, depending on where you're at. But we really just wanted to be intentional about our conversation, which started with actually having a share discussion with a couple of folks here about what is it that we're seeing on the ground. So a lot of the conversation that we'll start off with is actually understanding the conditions. When there is so much information, there's so many things happening. I saw on those sticky notes, human rights violations, violence, takeover in different parts of the country, this sort of sense of everything is on fire all the time in different places. We really want to be able to make sense of it. Like, what's the purpose? Who benefits from it? And really arrive at a shared consensus about what that is. So we'll spend our first part of our conversation really kind of really understanding what's the landscape, what we're seeing, what we understand this moment to be. And then we'll go into our second part, which is really going to be about how those threats and connections really interplay with political violence. What is political violence? What's the purpose of it? Who benefits from it? And what tools and frameworks can we utilize to make it backfire, to make it less possible for immigrant people to be targeted, for communities of color to be targeted, for rural communities to be targeted, for people across the working class to be pitted against each other and targeted. So we'll spend some time doing that. And once we learn what it is that are the tools and frameworks, then we'll go into some shared discussions about how to apply it. We'll get to do one sort of like quick exercise together to be like, okay, what does this look like? Do I know what the tool is? Do I know how to apply it? And then we'll go into some additional conversations in another breakout where you get to put it in practice with a community group, and you'll be in that conversation. And then we'll talk about what our next steps. We're gonna have some homework. Part of the conversation here is that we want you to have actionable steps. We know that this is a moment for action, care and love in action. And so we really wanted to spend some time discussing what is it that we want to do next. So why are we here? It's like one of the questions that I always ask myself on why I agree to be in a space, why do I agree to spend a Tuesday afternoon with you all. And for me is, as I said, talked to Matt about your previous session, as I understood who's coming to the space, is that we actually all need and could benefit from understanding the conditions that we're navigating. Because they're not isolated, they're all really interconnected. So if we all can call a chicken, it gives us a better opportunity to know what do we need to do with that chicken. And so really, deepening an understanding and collective wisdom, visibilizing the resistance. I saw in the comments, like there's some good news. There is some stuff out in Chicago, out of LA, out of Portland that is giving us hope, that is setting some footprint for us who maybe are not yet facing similar conditions to prepare, to be ready, and to know how to respond should any of those conditions be replicated in our communities. And we really want to really awaken both our theological and practical imagination about how we might move from a passive stance into more an assertive stance. What is it that we want to take action on? If we know that this is the conditions that folks are facing, how do we live in our practice and giving some of this conversation to be more than just knowing, but doing. And as I shared before, really getting some concepts that allows us to work through what is political violence, getting some action steps and a plan to prepare. And then I think we can go to the next slide. So we're gonna talk briefly about what are the sort of conversations that we want to have together. Why is it that we want to ground ourselves in this space? And what is hope? What is the purpose of this training? How did folks come to think about this training or this workshop? And I think what I will share, and definitely welcome Matt if there's any add-ons, is that we are in a moment where I think we need to actually pull into both multi-generational wisdom, and I think we need to pull from other movements that have experienced the amount of political violence and repression that we're seeing right now. And so this initiative around a hope harnessing our power to make political violence backfire is a multiracial, multi-generational community organizers and movement leaders saying how we meet this moment is actually by creating strategic nonviolent actions, because this nonviolent action creates the opportunity for us to bring more awareness, for us to bring more people into this fight, and for us to think about how we're ultimately interconnected with the folks who are most impacted about this moment. So centering the voices of people impacted, supporting the leadership of communities who are both historically targeted by political violence, but the ones that are blunting the impact of political violence. And the role here for all of us is to really understand and spend some time digesting what is our role in this moment to stop and deter political violence from happening. because each of us has an active role that we can play. And there's a spectrum in the way in which we can do that together. So this particular framework is just a process and a conversation that I think allows each and one of us to identify what are the ways in which we want to be involved and what are the ways that we can take action together in a way that feels meaningful, in a way that feels connected. So we'll go into like, how do we want to show up as a group? And then I think we can go to the next slide. I'm gonna ask maybe if folks can volunteer to maybe read one or two and then pass it to the next person. I do know there are a couple of people who might be running an errand or might be feeling a little under the weather. So I asked maybe Bobby, I see you on my screen. Will you mind maybe sharing the first two and then you want to pass the mic? And if you can go, just pass the mic for the next person. That's okay too.
Speak from your own experience and community. Be present. Have your video on if possible.
Carolyn, you want to go?
Sure. Center voices who have been most targeted by political violence. Move up, move back. Self-awareness to manage participation. Jamie, you want to take over?
Trying to see which one we were on.
Let discomfort.
Okay, let discomfort lead to inquiry and explore tensions with grace.
You want to pass it to the next person?
How about Barbara Date?
Differentiate between intent and impact. Recognize everyone's humanity.
Take care of
Julie.
each other. Take care of each other. Take care of yourself.
Julie, do
Engage,
you want to close us out? Go ahead.
engage in confidentiality. Stories stay, lessons live.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
So we want to do community agreements actually in practice to be able to say, like, how do we show up? How do we share? How do we let others take us in space? So I welcome you to continue to do that. And then Matt, you're going to kick us off. But I love being able to start hearing from each other, both open on the mic, and feel free to also, before I pass it back to Matt, is like, if you're on your Zoom, on your computer, on your phone, you have the chat feature, you have the emoji feature. If someone says something that really resonates with you, use it. If someone says something that really spoke to you, use a little clapping emoji. If you are hearing something that like wowed you, like I didn't know, use a reaction too. And then Zoom is also pretty cool. If you needed to take a little break, if you're walking away from your computer, you can put the little I'm back or I'm away and it'll let us know. And I see the emojis showing up. I just wanted to go over that because sometimes when we're sharing, it's hard to, jump in or to visualize if you heard something that resonated. So I just wanted to make sure that there are an infinity of ways in which we can communicate, even if you're not verbally sharing. And sending a lot of love and gratitude for many of you who are either taking care of a loved one who's not feeling well, not feeling well yourself, eating or making dinner. We're here and we're here for you and we're together. So passing it back to you, Matt.
Yeah, I can step into this next part. I think you were going to start off this next, like, what is political violence? Do you want to take it? I'll take it if you want me to, but I think you were going to kick it off.
All right. I was ready. I was like, wait, we're switching. Okay, so I'm gonna kick us off And as we talked a little bit earlier, we really wanted to do a shared assessment of what is it that we're navigating. And so as you see obviously on your screen, we wanted to have a shared definition about what is political violence and what is repression, so that we all start from a baseline of what is it. When we collectively say someone is experiencing or being victim of political violence or being threatened with political violence, that we have a shared definition. It's important. So as we define it for the HOPE framework, is that political violence is a threat or threatening to hurt or hurting other person, other people, group of people for political reasons. And we'll talk a little bit more of what it looks like. And you know, you've heard us say the word repression. We've heard probably on the news and all across that there are different tactics that are being utilized right now to pose repression of the people or the people's voices. So how we define repression for this framework of HOPE is that there is use of pressure or force against an individual or a group in order to control or subdue the individual of the group. So many of the tactics that we're seeing in response of the LA raids, many of the tactics that we've seen in response to what's happening in Chicago, many of the tactics that we saw over the weekend here in Portland, where camps were completely wiped out and shoved out of the way, some of those pieces could be said as repression. Maybe journalists who are being silenced in this moment, immigrants who maybe don't have permanent status and are criticizing publicly the administration. They're being threatened with detention and deportation. Some are, you know, activists have been detained and arrested. Someone could say they are being targeted because of repression. They are being targeted because they want to silence or subdue the group that is calling attention to the political violence at this moment. So we wanted to start there to be able to say, what's our shared definition? And to understand why is it that the things that we're seeing are happening, we have to understand why do people engage in political violence in the first place? What is the incentive, for lack of better words, for them? And those reasons could be including things like achieving a political goal. They have an agenda that they want to come to fruition. They want to assert political power over another group, and or they want to communicate a very direct message to an outside audience. If you're an immigrant and you speak out and we detain you and threaten you with deportation, other immigrants may not speak out and take action anymore. If you are a U.S. citizen who is filming and recording ICE and we pick you up and arrest you, the message that it sends to the community at large is you should not be recording. You should not be documenting. If you want to be able to say, we run this whole government, we're going to shut it down until people are like screaming on the rooftops because of the scarcity it's creating, that it's a political reason, because you're trying to create a very specific political goal come into play. So we wanted to really land what is political violence, what is repression, and what are the reasons why people engage in political violence. And so I think with that, then Matt will walk us through, well, what is the reasons and what purpose does it serve?
Thanks, CJ. And all this is happening in a particular context. And so it's happening in a context in our country right now. And so you might look at the slide that's in front of you right now and think, well, this is ripped from the headlines. Like Matt and CJ just made a list of things that are happening in the country right now and put it on the slide. But in fact, we didn't. What this is a description of what those who study authoritarian governments identify that authoritarians do. And so when you look at this, they direct investigations against their critics. They deploy the military domestically. They overreach federal law enforcement. They give license to law breaking. There's regulatory retaliation, and the autocrat won't leave. These are the things that authoritarians do. So, I'm putting a link in here to the authoritarian playbook. There's actually a lot written about authoritarianism and the study of authoritarians and authoritarian movements. And so political violence in the country right now is happening in the context of the rise of authoritarianism. And so we're not just talking about the current president, we're talking about the rise that enables an authoritarian system in which checks and balances are undermined, and what's happening is what's called democratic backsliding. The entire democratic system is being undermined in the United States right now. And these are some of the traits of the authoritarian playbook. So we see it happening in other places around the world too. So, for example, we know on the right side what happened in January 6, 2021. In 2022, with active support from President Bolsonaro, his supporters stormed the Congress and the Supreme Court as part of an attempted coup. They were taking notes from what happened in the United States. So, see, it's worldwide. This is what happens. So, see, Viktor Orban in Hungary overreach, trying to take over Hungary's courts. Here's the headline from the article in The Guardian: Viktor Orban's grips on Hungary's courts threatens the rule of law, warns a judge. And then you see an article from this year: Trump's call for impeachment of judge who tried to halt deportations. So this is what happens. Authoritarians undermine the rule of law. And so when we talk about political violence, or when we talk about the rise of deportation, the use of the military domestically right now in the United States, it's not just happening in a vacuum. This is what happens globally when authoritarianism rises. And so it creates some questions for us, and that are fertile questions about who we will be as a church in this moment, how we will rise to the moment. And tonight we're talking about creating a backfire dynamics around immigration. But there's a broader and a longer question, because what we're seeing right now is just what's happened in the first 10 months of the present administration, and they're just getting started. And so what we're talking about right now is just what they're still trying to get their feet under them. And so there's some deeper questions about what's going to happen in the next 4 years, but that's not just what we're here for right now. So we're going to keep moving, and we're going to talk a little bit about the impact of political violence and repression. The impact is division, it's distraction, it's fear, and it's silence. And so I want to ask for you in Zoom, can you find your react button where you can raise a hand? And if you can't find it and you just raise your hand in front of the video, that's fine. So either way, I'm going to ask a couple questions. Yeah, like that, Sherry. Perfect. So, okay, good. You've got it. Okay, now we know where it is. Now I'm going to ask some questions, and I want you to raise your hand in Zoom if you can, or raise your hand, your actual hand on your body. Either way, in front of the video screen, if this applies to you. Have you experienced a threat of physical violence as a result of your involvement in the community? As a result of your community leadership, have you experienced a threat of physical violence? I see several hands going up. Okay, you can put your hands down. Yes. I saw 5 or 6 hands that I was able to see, and there's more screens than I can look at once. So I'll just keep going. Have you experienced harassment either online or in real life for your political activity? Have you experienced harassment either online or in real life for your political activity? Okay. Right now I'm seeing it's up to 17 hands that I'm seeing right now. Okay. Yes. Okay. Have you experienced doxing? Doxing is where your personal information is shared publicly so that people can locate you or find you. If so, please raise your hand. I see 4 hands. Thank you. Now, some of these you may not feel comfortable sharing, and that's fine, because some of these are personal. But if you've experienced a direct physical violence, either yourself or someone in your community, as a result of your political involvement, or for another reason that you think of as being political violence or repression, please raise your hand. I see 5, 6 hands. Thank you. If you have had fear or doubt about political activity, about getting involved or speaking up, please raise your hand. Thank you. Everyone I can see on the screen right now has their hand up. And I'll say that the last one, and you don't have to respond, is have you witnessed incitement or enabling? And the thing is that part of what they want to do is they want to cause fear among us. They want to cause us, by just us witnessing the threat, puts fear inside of us and plants a seed that is the repression. So this is how political violence and repression works, and it's what we're here to challenge. Who is most targeted by political violence and repression? Black communities, LGBTQIA plus people, immigrants and refugees, women, activists in the news, local elections workers, local elected officials, state lawmakers. This year, there have been multiple state lawmakers assassinated in the United States. So this is how they do it. When political violence and repression happens, these are their steps. This is their method. Number 1, they cover it up. They say, that didn't happen. They bury the bodies, either literally or metaphorically. Number 2, they devalue the target or the victim. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. This is something CJ and I were talking about last night, that this model just gives us language for something that so many of us have seen for so long. So this might not be earth-shattering, but maybe it just gives you some tags to put on what you've already seen before. So they devalue the target or victim. They say, oh, well, they don't matter anyhow. They're dirty. They're a criminal. They weren't actually contributing in the community. Oh, they're crazy. Oh, they were drug addicts. They weren't educated. They don't matter. Reinterpret what happened in their favor. Oh, well, maybe it happened that families were divided through the deportation program, but really our community is better now that all of those people are gone. So I guess some damage might have happened, but in the end, we're going to be a happier community. Hijacking the official channels to give a false sense of due process. Okay, this one is that so let's say a police shooting happens and they say, we're going to have a commission to study that. The commission is going to last, it's going to last for maybe a year and a half, and then they're going to have a report, and then there's going to be an appeal, and we're really not going to find out anything for 3 years. And in the meantime, who knows? I don't know. Did any injustice happen? We can't really know for 3 years. So that's hijacking the official channels. And the last one is intimidating and bribing people to support their tactics. So you know how that one goes. So what we're going to talk about is how we flip these 5 on their head. So have you seen these 5 things in reality? If you have, like, say something in the chat. What's one of these that you've seen in reality? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Can you just like put it in the chat that you've seen happen for real? All of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 2 and 3. Yeah. So, the message that we want to bring through this backfire work. Oh, Bev, did you want to say something? Your hand went up. Okay. The message that we want to bring is that we can go on the offense. And maybe you like that language, maybe you don't like that language. Another way to talk about it that CJ and I are bringing is like we can stand up. They want to oppress us. That makes us small, and we can bring ourselves back up from being crunched down. We can come back up, and we can reclaim our ability to respond, to do something. We can reclaim our agency, our power, and our imagination. And that's what we're here for. And so I'm going to pass it back over to you, CJ, for the next piece.
Thank you, Matt. And, I'm seeing on the comments, all of us are very familiar to the feeling of that fear, of that retaliation, of that dehumanization. And this is not only something that immigrants are experiencing right now. We see this with our communities of color. We're seeing it right now with the government shutdown. The narratives about people who need food stamps, the people who rely on healthcare, the narratives around trans and queer people. This dehumanizing, this devaluing, this like rerouting and reframing the story, it's intentional. Because if you're able to distract me from what's the real human impact of it, then it's easier for me to not care. If I just think it's numbers, if I just think that there are people who I don't have a connection to, or that, it's just a budget process, and that there's not like real children and families who don't have access to these material conditions, then it's easier for me to be like, I'm going to let the government figure that out. Versus being like, no, there are hundreds of thousands of loved ones and community members and neighbors who are experiencing the family separation that we're seeing, some of the human rights abuses and violations that I saw come out of Tacoma or out of South Texas or out of Florida, where some of the most detrimental conditions in solitary confinement happen. It'll be easy for this government to erase by dehumanizing people that there's been over 24 people who've died inside detention this year alone. It'll be really easy for them to hide, for us to visibilize that it's just not the few folks that we know in our neighborhood that are getting picked up, that there is 59,000 people right now inside of detention facilities all across the country. 59,000 people. And that every day that those people are detained, someone is making money out of them. They're not getting adjustment of papers. They're not getting, some of them are not even getting deported because the purpose is profit for people who invest in this type of facilities. So when we talk about why nonviolence, why people power, is because what we want to do together is actually shift public consciousness. We want to be able to humanize what people are experiencing, because it's not just that people are now coming into the US with a legal status. It is not just that the immigration system is difficult to navigate. And it is not just that people are actually being forced into labor camps inside of these detention facilities, or that they're having incredible medical neglect, which is why people are suffering inside of these facilities. And so waging that sort of struggle and that public awareness and that community awareness requires for us to identify different opportunities in which we can be in this like nonviolent action, whether it is the No Kings rally, whether it is going out to a vigil, whether it is joining this community space where we get to put together a very clear plan to action on how to support our community. All of us play a role in why and how we humanize community, and how we humanize the struggle, how we humanize the issues that we're facing. And it requires actually a lot more of us that are not here. Every time I think about how much people does it take to change this kind of conditions, I think that we need double the people who are in this call, and double the people who are going to be connected to you, double the people who showed up to vote, double the people who are even in opposition of their ideology. And I also want to invite us to think about, we live in a moment in time where, whether it's because we're overworked, because we're in a very difficult economy that thrives of survival, that thrives of, I just have to take care of my needs and I can't care about other people's needs, that it's really hard to have conversations with folks who might have different political views right now, or who maybe they don't fully agree to what's happening, but are not currently taking actions to stop it from happening. And so the invitation for this framework is that it requires that we engage mass participation, just like we saw at the King's Rally, just like what you see outside of the Tacoma detention facility, just like you see around different folks coming together, but that we actually need to bring more and more and more and more people in order for us to actually shift the tide. Because right now, think about it, like we're just getting the waves slamming against us. We actually need to be able to change the course of where we're at right now. And that requires so much many more of us. And when I think about this moment, and we'll send us a little bit on a break to kind of like move some energy, I think about why nonviolence in the face of extreme violence. That tends to be a question that comes up. And for the US, there's a movement history around nonviolence. But even nonviolence didn't mean that people who are acting and organizing for nonviolence action did not face violence themselves. The civil rights movement was what we see on the books, is the marches, communities coming together and taking action. What we don't see is the incredible fear that they had to navigate, incredible violence that they had to face, especially in the South. What we don't see is that it took a lot to convince people in the North to actually care about what's happening in states in the South. And so what we need to really ground ourselves is that historically, nonviolence allows a low entry point and high impact. When more of us are willing and ready to speak out, it becomes a broader notion. It becomes public common sense. It becomes public common sense to care about our neighbors, to love one another, to not need to have a deep relationship, to want to see your basic humanities and needs as something that we share. We don't have to align and all across the board. We don't have to have a we think. We just have to see each other's humanity. And so nonviolence allows us to start at that baseline. It allows us to bring people who might actually be needing an invitation to tap back into their humanity and that shared notion that we actually are deserving human beings all together who deserve care, who deserve shelter, who deserve community, who deserve belonging, independently of what's your like multiracial, multicultural, multi identities. It is not a radical idea to have someone have their basic needs so that they're well taken care of and so that they can build community across their loved ones, around their neighborhoods, around their schools, around their places of worship. And so we really want to talk about nonviolence as an opportunity for us to build a baseline of our connective tissue, which is our humanity. And so that's a little bit of what we're going to be diving in. We're going to talk a little bit more about why is it that we want to do together, but we also want to just give a space for us to reset some energy. So I'm going to ask us to take a quick 5-minute break. If you've been sitting, if you're like, "Whew, okay, I'm ready. Now we talked about where we're at. Now I'm ready to take some action." We'll come back at 5:40 if you're on the West Coast, 7:40 if you're on Central, 8:40 if you're on the Eastern side of the country. I think it's 6:30 if you're in Mountain. We'll come back at 40 minutes after the hour and we'll keep our conversation going. Drink some water, maybe grab a fidget if you're like me, and kind of get it moving, and we'll come back in 5. We'll see you early.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. So, in this last hour or a little less of our time together, we're going to introduce our response to the 5 ways that repression functions, which is what we call the backfire model. And CJ is going to kick that off, and then we're going to walk through like, what do we do? They cover up, and what do we do instead? So we're going to walk through that, and then we're going to give you a chance to apply it with a scenario. And so CJ is going to start by introducing the backfire model. And CJ, why don't you take it away? I'll start the screen share.
Thank you, thank you. And I know that was a question, and I don't know if it's Kathy or Katie. Is my ESL the first one? Kathy? Okay. I'm like, wait, I don't know if I'm reading in Spanish or I have to change the brain. So appreciate you for giving me some grace. All right, so we talked about what is the way in which they operate. And so really thinking about the making political violence backfire and repression backfire is actually flipping the story for them. So if we know that they're going to try to hide or they're going to try to ultimately prevent us from actually knowing what's happening, what we really want to be able to spend time on instead of allowing them to cover it up is actually reveal the injustice, being able to visibilize that injustice. We all talked about like hearing a lot of the dehumanizing language and the devaluing language that they're using. Our role, and in this framework, what will need to happen is that we want to make sure that we're able to redeem the person. Matt, you want to go, or you want me to go through all 5 and then you do the one-on-one? All right.
No,
so we want
here we
to
go.
validate the person who's being targeted by political violence. So if we actually reveal and redeem it, what we end up doing is that we actually counter their tactics and how they're trying to hide and cover up the injustice and how they're trying to dehumanize or get us to care less about the person. And then you want to go to the next one, Matt?
Sure.
Sweet. So we talk generally about what is the story they want to say. We talked about how is it that they want to reinterpret what happened in their favor. They want to be able to own the story and be able to spin it in a way that allows them to say a narrative that helps them. So our role, instead of allowing them to reinterpret what happened, is actually our role is going to be to reframe what happened. It's not just that someone got detained and deported. It's that they're separating families. They're taking people away from their communities. They're severing community ties. They're removing people from the places that they call home and belong to. So being able to do a reframe to ensure that we're able to visibilize the injustice.
Here, I can take this one. So this is a redirect. And so this is the one where they try to divert action into official channels. And the picture here is the March on Washington. And you might kind of like remember the March on Washington because now it's like 50, 60 years ago. And it's just like an amazing thing that happened. Like a whole bunch of people went and marched on Washington, and that's amazing. But in the political moment, legislation was stuck in Washington. And there'd been a series of campaigns, and there'd been a series of smaller marches in Washington, D.C., year after year, and African-American leaders coming to D.C., and there'd been local campaigns around the country, and they were working for massive jobs and electoral legislation. And they'd been waiting for the politicians to respond. And the politicians had hijacked the official channels. So instead, Bayard Rustin and A. Philip Randolph and the leaders of the civil rights movement took the initiative and redirected the initiative and said, we're going to like take the offensive. And so we're going to go to Washington. We're going to take 500,000 people to Washington, and we're going to demand what needs to happen. And that created the conditions in which the Civil Rights Act was able to happen. So thinking about this on a much like a smaller scale, like redirecting is that when they say, well, we'll look into this or we'll investigate this. I mean, think of all the conditions where you hear those words at the community level. We'll look into this. What are some of the times when you hear that? Well, we'll look into that. We'll see what we can find out about that. Just in chat, where do you think about that? In a community context that you're working on issues, where does that happen? We'll look into that. We'll have someone get back to you about that. Tell me in chat.
And I see on the chat.
Okay, I've seen
Press
city council, school boards, press conferences, in churches where folks seem to think that having a meeting about something means we've done something when we just talked about it. The police chief and the city manager always said that. Okay, so here's what we think in redirect in the backfire model. What you can do is you can publicly support the process. We can say, oh, they're having an investigation. We are going to stand outside every Wednesday until they release their report. We're so glad they're having an investigation. We're going to support it. Look, everyone, they're having an investigation. We're not going to let it go underground. Or you can criticize it publicly. You can criticize it and say, this isn't good enough. The wrong people are on the commission. So we're thinking, remember, we're going on the offensive. Or you make demands of the process. We need this and this to happen if that's going to be an authentic process. Or you could launch a parallel process. You can say, well, they're having an investigation, but it's bankrupt. So we're going to have a people's investigation into this situation. Like, what's really happening up there at the Butler County Jail? They're not really going to tell us, so we're going to have a people's investigation. And I mean, the stories of this are amazing. This kind of thing are amazing. There were movement friends of mine who were fighting a casino being built in the city of Philadelphia, and the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board wouldn't release the documents. And they were hiding out the documents, and they decided to have a people's investigation. And they went with huge magnifying glasses to the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board to have an investigation of their own to find where could the documents be. They said they couldn't find them anywhere. So they went and had their own investigation. So these are all the options to redirect when they try to hijack the institutional processes. So, CJ, how about resist?
Yeah, and I think, I'm seeing it on the chat already, how we're resisting is holding them accountable. Even though it's difficult, there's folks out in City Council today, not just giving up when these injustices are happening, but continue to resist the threats or the rewards for silence. We see this around immigration a lot. Immigration enforcement, ICE, will pick somebody up and say, if you don't file a complaint, we'll dismiss your case quietly. Or if you don't post this video online, we won't actually continue to pursue your removal. This happens with police, right? They try to do a settlement. They try to do stuff like, hey, this doesn't have to be such a bad thing. If you just come to your check-in, we can sort out your case. And we know that often that creates different conditions for people. And so turning this as a way to expose even, hey, they're trying to bribe us. They're trying to keep us from visibilizing the issue and actually create more of that backfire. Because then what it does, as Matt was mentioning, it really visibilizes that they are trying to retell the story, that they're trying to cover up the injustice, that they're actually not trying to do something about the injustice that is happening. So resisting the tactics that these institutions, decision makers, political figures are using. If you play by our rules, it'll be just easier, knowing that's actually a bribe. That is them trying to buy our silence or buy our complacency. And so us resisting that will actually enable more people to be able to be seeing what is it that is actually happening.
So this is what they do, and this is what we do. This is the review, all right? I want someone to read these out. Like Deb Oskin, will you read out the first ones? Okay, they do what?
They cover up.
And we?
Reveal.
Okay, Bev Nye, will you do the next one? They?
They devalue the target or victim.
And we?
Redeem or validate the target.
Okay. How about Vanjie? Will you do number 3? They like to
reinterpret what happened in their favor.
And we will
reframe, interpret the event as an injustice.
Okay, all right. Number 4, I wonder if Donald Martin would do this one for us.
They hijack official channels to give a false sense of due process.
And instead,
we redirect, mobilize support to not rely on official channels.
Okay, Donald, thank you. And finally, they are going to, Connie, tell us what they're going to do.
Intimidate and bribe people to support their tactics.
These are nasty things for us nice brethren to be talking about on a Tuesday night. Intimidating and bribing. Did you think you were going to talk about this in a webinar? What are we going to do instead?
Intimidation and bribes.
Yes. Okay, now to kind of wrap this up, and before we go to our application activity, I want to have a little conversation with you, CJ. Because look, we're talking about backfire. And what are we really talking about here? And we're applying it to immigration as a case study. So what do we mean when we talk about backfire? So when we talk about backfire, we are talking about creating conditions in which, I'm going to shut off the screen share for a minute. It becomes more costly for the perpetrators or those who are making threats to do so. What does it mean to make it more costly? What does it mean? What do y'all think? It means it makes it more costly. It doesn't mean that we're going to do violence against them, but what does it mean? It becomes more costly.
We create political fallout.
We create political fallout for them. Okay, Enton, what are you talking about? Tell me, what does that mean? What's political fallout?
It becomes more costly because they start losing support. They're being shown as not being
Aha.
the upstanding people that they want to project they are.
Oh, okay. Someone else chime in here. And CJ, if I know you've got some nuggets of wisdom, so I want you to just like come on in. So anybody else?
Lose votes or vote out of office.
Yes. Kimberly, did you want to speak up?
Yeah, I was just thinking, anything that costs time, and sense of their reputation also costs them money, and that's sometimes what they're most worried about.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Time, reputation. That's exactly right. Okay, Terry Lynn.
A perfect example is what happened with Jimmy Kimmel show, where people canceled their Hulu and they used their money to stop and make a dent in what was happening. And that was one of the reasons why so many people, they were able to bring it back, was because it was an economic issue for them.
Okay, now I like what Terry Lynn just did. Did you see that? Terry Lynn just took it out of the abstract and brought it right down to real life. Can someone else give an example of where you've seen backfire really happen, where someone paid the price because it got real and they lost support? Kathy Coulter, give it to me.
I was thinking about when you challenge their version of things, they have to come up with a new cover story or a new reason why. And so they
okay.
To the drawing board and rethink. So
yeah.
That's costly in that way.
They can't keep their story straight either, can they?
Right.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Bobby Dykema.
I think the way that Portland has responded to ICE is a beautiful example of this, because with all the creatures in inflatable suits, and ICE just looks ridiculous. It doesn't create, that intimidation on the evening news anymore.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. I just wanted to explore this. Thanks for walking down that path with me a little. Oh, Bruce, did you want to chime in? I really just wanted to kind of peel the onion a little bit about why are we calling it backfire? What is it about this? Because it's like the 5 points are kind of interesting, but what's the deeper thing we're trying to do is make it costly for the perpetrators by removing their political support and isolating them. So, okay, Bruce.
The public outcry for the deportation of Kilmer Abrego Garcia.
Yep. Kind of extend that a little bit more.
Well, with everybody shouting and hollering, Trump had to bring him back.
Amen. What was involved in that? I know you follow the news. Like, talk to me a little bit more. Like, if we wanted to do that again, what would we do?
Well, this is the guy that was deported secretly in opposition to the courts, and there was all this public outcry. This is what, 4, 5, 6 months ago already.
So they did what? What's step one of the backfire model? What is it?
Make
Somebody
noise.
tell me. Reveal.
Reveal.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. So they revealed. Yeah. Okay. What else happened? What else did they do in that case?
Redeem his character.
They redeemed his character. They rehumanized him. Okay. Bring it. Keep it coming. What else happened?
Kept showing up. Didn't let it go.
Yes. CJ, do you have any comments to make? And I think we need to go to this scenario, but I just wanted to stay here for kind of the to bring together what we're doing with the backfire model for a minute.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of build a little bit of what it's already been shared. The not letting up, the rehumanizing, the talking about Kilmer talking about the hundreds and thousands of people who are currently being picked up, whether it's in the streets of Chicago, Portland, in Tacoma, in rural Yakima, which is where our organized and seen community members also be impacted. It's insufficient when they say a person had a criminal record, a person was undocumented for X amount of time. They just didn't apply for citizenship. They just didn't do it the right way. It's insufficient now because what we've done is that we've been able to reinterpret what is happening in this moment. What is happening in this moment is that immigration is being utilized as a wedge to weaken the working class. So while billionaires make record-breaking profits, communities have to work multiple jobs. They're losing their health care. They're losing SNAP benefits. They're losing any and all safety nets to stay in their homes. They're getting priced out of their homes. And what is being told is that immigrants are to blame for that. And what community is realizing, because we are humanizing them, because we're redirecting the energy, because we are reinterpreting what's happening, more people are actually questioning, is it that this person just undocumented? Or is it that they want us to just be paying attention to these quote unquote people who are not good in our community? And instead, we really have an opportunity to be able to humanize this issue. For a long time, as an immigrant rights organizer for over a decade, when I talk to people about defunding ICE, when I talk to people about abolishing this agency as a whole, most people were puzzled. They were like, what do you mean? This is necessary. And I am on record and in writing. There's a book called Abolition for the People. This is the fight to melt ICE, because this has been a fight for over 20 years. And this moment is when it feels more tangible, because there's so many people saying, like, actually, an administration that can weaponize a whole agency against its people, not just immigrants. There's over 170 US citizens to date that we are able to track, not even that we're for sure, but that have been detained by this agency. So we have to be able to say it's not just undocumented people, it's not just immigrants. This is an agency that is completely out of whack. And when we think about that, and when we say, well, why is that all these tech companies who are doing mass firings and layoffs while breaking record profits are also invested in this detention machine? Why is it that they have contracts with Geo, with Court Civic, with the local city jail? Why is it that the local city jail needs the city budget, but we don't have affordable housing, but we don't have reliable transportation, but we don't have a hospital within our rural communities, but we have money for a new detention facility. We have money for hiring more ICE agents. Like, that's the moral crisis we have to really spend some time in. And what we know is that we're also all in different places. There's a question around, well, how do we visualize the impact of detention? In Portland, in Chicago, in LA, you see the military rolling out to ICE out of facilities. You see agents dragging multiple people outside of Home Depots, outside of public spaces. In Oklahoma, it looks like over 100 people inside of the Oklahoma County Jail with ICE detainers, waiting for ICE to come pick them up. In rural places across the US, it looks like the same sheriff's office who stops you for a driver's license now is asking you for a proof of immigration status. That is true in Florida, that is true in Arizona, that is true in Texas, that is true in Oklahoma. And so maybe we don't see the people getting dragged out of our homes, but we are seeing them slowly and surely getting trickled out into the county jails, getting trickled out into the detention facilities. And so our ability to be able to reveal what is happening, to actually humanize those people, us having contact with law enforcement doesn't inherently make us criminal, but they are equating it to that because it helps them dehumanize people. And so when we think about what is it that we need to pay attention to, in Oklahoma, I'm not tracking mass rates. I'm tracking what is the collaboration around my city police department, my sheriff and county law enforcement. Oklahoma, the governor launched Operation Guardian Sounds like a great name. What that has allowed is that Oklahoma Highway Patrol now gets to ask immigration questions to people who pass through the highways and people who commute within the state of Oklahoma. Just last month, they bragged about the hundreds of people outside of Oklahoma who drove through the state and they stopped and detained because they were driving through the state. And so this becomes our own assessment of what is possible. And so sometimes the things are more visible. Sometimes it's going to cost us a little bit of research and mapping and understanding the local conditions in order for us to be able to know what to do and how to respond. So part of what we're going to do next is actually put you in a breakout to do some of the thinking together, where you get to have a shared experience around putting it into practice. You're going to be with about 4 or 5 people. And again, I welcome you to use chat, verbal, nonverbal cues. And you're going to actually get to build a response that actually allows you to think about a scenario that gives you some actual practice in being able to think about what are things that are happening now? What are conversations that need to actually be happening? Is there some preparation? What I heard from Matt and what I've heard from this group, there are folks who are already currently detained. There are folks who have been removed already out of the country. And some of us are like, hey, I haven't gotten someone really close to me yet, but I don't have to wait until it happens to be ready to know what to do and how to respond. So our conversation on the breakout is going to be really about preparing a scenario together that allows us to be able to respond. And think about the different 5 R's: reveal, redeem, the reinterpret, redirect, and resist. Reveal because they're hiding the real story. Redeem because they're trying to dehumanize people and they want to not care about the person. Reframe because what they're saying is going to be reinterpreted in their benefit. Redirect because they're going to give us a runaround and try to get us through all these fake processes. The deportation process itself is the redirect. They want us to believe that the system is working, yet people are getting picked up when they go to their check-in or to their hearing. And then the resist, not play by that rule, not let them reward us for staying silent. We really want to spend some time in that. So I see, Matt, you're dropping the slides for each of the groups. And then you want to go over their scenario.
Sure. I'll go over the scenario. Okay.
Perfect.
So when you get into your breakout groups, in just a minute, I'm going to give you a brief scenario. I'm going to tell it to you, and I'll also paste it into the chat. It's very short, but it'll just give you something to work with. And when you get into your breakout groups, which will be 5 or 6 people, that Enton is setting up right now, I'll invite you to go. Each breakout group will have, just in the top of the Zoom corner, it tells you what number your breakout group is. And so you can go to the slide for your breakout group. Group number 1, group number 2, group number 3. So please follow that slide link now so that you can take notes here about whatever you come up with. So here's your task. Review the scenario, assign a note taker. You'll have 15 minutes to discuss and come up with a response plan, and then we'll come back and share highlights. So here is the description. It has been 2 weeks since an ICE raid. And Ricardo Hernandez, who's a Honduran and a green card holder, is attacked outside the restaurant where he works. The assault was clearly racially motivated, and Ricardo is in critical condition. You're gathering with 5 or 6 people from your community to do something. What are you going to plan to do? That's the scenario.
Would you repeat that one more time, please?
It's been 2 weeks since an ICE raid in your community. Ricardo Hernandez, who is Honduran but holds a green card, is attacked outside the restaurant where he works. The attack is clearly racially motivated, and Ricardo is now in critical condition. So
the attack was not part of the raid.
The attack wasn't part of the raid, but
a result.
It's the moment that we're living in the country right now, and things tempers are high.
Yeah, sure. I just want to make sure I understood.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I'll put this in the chat, and then Enton can put you in your breakout groups as soon as possible.
Any last questions before we're ready to go? Make sure you follow that link and type your responses in, the one with your group number. There will be 6 groups, so find the page that corresponds. You ready? Here we go.
Welcome, welcome. We want to just create a quick moment to maybe share some aha moments, or just like as you were working together on the breakout, like what came up for you? Maybe we'll hear from a couple of people, maybe group 1, just like, 30 seconds to a minute. What came up? And then we'll go to group 2, group 3, group 4.
So in group 1, we talked about vulnerabilities that Ricardo might have, that his family, other coworkers might have, and how we could address those, as well as revealing and redeeming strategies. So.
And if I can add there, Bobby, just stand with the person, be a visible link or a visible sidekick there. Don't just talk about it. We do enough of that in our churches. We need to get there and stand with them in the hospital. See how he's doing. Give a presence to the hospital, as well as to the whatever other folks that are there, whether it was the gang members that beat him up, or whether it was ICE or whatnot. Be a present presence. Boy, that's weird.
Okay. I want to put like a fine point on the debrief, just because our time is so short, in terms of the ahas or the insights. We don't want to just have like a few ideas from each group about what you would do for Ricardo. What we're really looking for is, as you tried to think about the backfire model, what ahas or insights did you have that was like, oh, this was something that I thought differently, or this is something I struggled with. So that's what we're really looking for in the debrief right now.
In group 4, we not quite according to the model, but one of the issues we dealt with was, okay, what groups do we want to work with in our response? Do we want to limit it to churches? Do we want to limit it to Church of the Brethren? Do we want to work with other nonprofits that are very in tune to immigrant problems? Do we want to include politicians? We definitely wanted to involve the press, or use the press and use their research.
What stood out for me, this is Janine, as group 3, what stood out for me as I was recording what people were saying is it takes a group to come up with a lot of different ideas. So, and to then determine what they are, what action, not just what we're thinking about, but how are we actually specifically going to ask different people to act? That's what surfaced for me.
Maybe 1 or 2 reflections for the other groups. Go ahead.
I just was thinking that at some point, someone's got to volunteer to be the initiator and the person that continues to bring people in continue next steps. And if that's you, and then you find someone that's more closely aligned, connected with the situation, you can always hand that over. But you have to determine someone who is going to take responsibility for next steps and getting people into the room and that kind of thing. So we're so often kind of nice and differential, but sometimes we need to say, I'm gonna stand in this gap right now, and then when my Latino brothers, sisters, siblings come into the room, I will defer to them. But until we find all of our people, someone's got to take initiative and responsibility.
Idea out of group 6, and you're just going to the newspaper. Somebody was going to make a TikTok publicizing this.
I think in our group, we also, although we didn't say this explicitly, but we were reminded that we were dealing with an individual person and not just a project. And what I mean by that is, sure, we're applying the backfire model and strategizing, but at the same time thinking, well, wait a minute, he might need legal help. He might need help paying his medical bills. His family might need some help with something while he's out of commission.
It made me think I need to contribute to the Church of the Brethren Legal Defense Fund.
We could put the link for that into the chat. That sounds great.
I can do that.
I think too, we also, in our group, we were talking about not just Ricardo in the hospital, but also his family and what support they might need. Does his wife need transportation to the hospital? Do they need help with groceries? Do they need a presence to help make the kids feel safe by going, walking with them to school, but to humanize the entire situation and not just focus on Ricardo and what happened to him, but play it out in a larger space, because you have to, if you're going to make things feel, or for people to understand the humanness of what's happening, you have to broaden your focus, not just be really narrow on one thing.
And I'm being mindful of time, so I think maybe if I can ask Matt, if you want to go into just kind of what's going to be, I think, our closing, because a lot of what you all have shared is very connected to this taking initiative, having a plan, knowing the spectrum of opportunities that we have at our hand to be able to show up, to take action together, to understand that it's not just about being a good person to immigrant people, but that we really have some interconnected safety and trust and relationship and communal responsibility about what is happening in our neighborhoods and with our people. And then I love the invitation of like, while we find our people and bring more of our people, we have to figure out what are going to be the opportunities. And so let me know if you can put up, okay. Yes. Do you want to talk about that, Matt, before we close?
I lost my audio.
We can hear you now.
We're hearing you fine.
Yeah, I just wanted to put it back in the context of the DDR team that Vildor and Julie and Founa and I are working together, and many of you are supporting and working on the ground. That there are people here who are supporting people in your own communities already, people who are going to court this week, people who are concerned about their kids this week. And so we've been gathering, but we're building our capacity so that we can do more and different things as a community. And so we're here and training, maybe feeling like we're here as an individual, but we're building our capacity as a people. We're building our capacity as people together. So training is about leadership development. It's about what we become, and it changes what we can do. And it changes what the future is that we can find together. And so like it matters that we were here today and last week. And it matters. I want to thank you so much, CJ. And I want to thank you, Founa, for what you brought last week in the session that we did together. I want to thank you, Julie, for the organizing that you're doing, and Vildor for the organizing that you're doing, and everyone for the work that you're doing in your communities right now. And some of you might be figuring out, even tonight, what your pathway might be into this work. And I want to affirm that, and I want to bless it and say that even if before you came to this call tonight, you didn't see a pathway, and tonight you found a pathway, then that's beautiful. And this is where the work starts for you. And so I just want to thank Ventures in Christian Discipleship and McPherson College for the invitation to the Deportation Defense Response Team for this program. And I hope that you will stay connected and that we can stay connected as we continue in this moment, because this moment is not over. Like this 2-session class is over, but we're going to be continuing to live through some hard years. And so I think that we can find a path together and make a road by walking. Sometimes we might only see the next step, but we'll make the road as we walk it together. And so I want to thank everyone for your involvement and your energy and for your faithfulness. So thank you. Your ticket out the door will be just in chat to say what is one takeaway from either of these 2 sessions.
And while you're completing your ticket, go out the door of writing in the chat. Our special thanks to Matt and CJ, especially for tonight's presentation, but also to Julie and Vildor and Founa as well, the whole group of you that put this all together and are working so hard on our behalves. Thank you so much. Friends, this concludes our course. Do take time to throw into the chat what Matt has invited you to share about what's made a difference and what's impacting you. And we pray that you go in peace and continue to connect with those in your community and make as much of this a reality as we can as we stand up for peace and justice in this current situation.
Till we meet
Thank you
again.
all.
Peace be with you all. Thank you.